Okay, the FX2. There's going to be a lot of people who hate on this camera, and I was about to do a full rant video tearing it apart, but then I saw this ad by Sony that says, your journey begins here. And I realized what they're trying to do with this camera. The FX2 is not trying to be the FX3. I think it's trying to introduce people into the cinema line without doing the Super 35 sensor like the FX30. But it's also trying to really still be a stills camera at its heart. I would say it's not more of a stills camera, but it sure is more than the FX3. It's tough to call the FX3 a stills camera for a variety of reasons. I've probably shot 10 photos on my FX3. For the most part, I'm just shooting stills on my iPhone. But you can tell they really, with even the dial that goes from video to photo, the FX2 is trying to still be as much of a stills camera as it is a video camera. The main differentiating factor from the FX3 is that the FX2 borrows the A7 SC4, what are these? I never know the other camera names. What are the A7 for an A7C2 sensor? So it's an 800 base and 4000 base ISO. Now, the reason why I don't think they can do that 12,800 ISO of the FX3 is the megapixels, which you need more than 12 megapixels like the FX3 to be a professional stills camera. So the 33 megapixels means tighter pixels, which means they're not as great in low lights. So you have that 4000 base ISO. I wish truly the FX3 did have like a third ISO, because that jump from 800 to 12,800 is huge. At times it's just a bit too much, but that said, I would take 12,800 ISO, gun to my head, over 4,000 because it's just so amazing at night. Now, the frame rates on the FX2 were a bit confounding when I first heard them. It's full frame 4K, 30 frames. At the max you can go to full frame 4K. If you want to go to 4K 60, it's cropped. It's now Super 35. And if you want 120, then you got to go to the full HD. So that was where one of my big sticking points. I was going to tear that apart, but I think it's because they tried to nerf it a little, or perhaps it's because they don't want it to overheat. But then again, the FX2 does have a fan on the inside that cools it so you can keep shooting. What I really think Sony's trying to do is create that barrier of entry into the cinema line. So I know people are going to tear this apart, and you can, but I don't think the FX2 is trying to be everything for everyone. I think it's a great camera, like I said, to get into filmmaking, because the top handle, it's $800 less than the FX3, which maybe seems like a lot, but not a little. But when you actually think that $800 less, you're actually getting a stills camera as well as a video camera. So then when you actually begin to think about that, it's like you're getting two cameras in one. So that price point begins to make a bit more sense. When I first saw that price point, I was like, it's only $800 cheaper, and it has all these things that the FX3 doesn't. But again, it's not trying to be a camera for someone like me. It's trying to help someone who wants to shoot stills and still wants that eyepiece. And those eyepieces are useful for filmmaking still, but it's definitely necessary for stills photographers. But I would encourage you, if you haven't shot video with an eyepiece, it's still a beautiful experience. You really just focus on the image, but that's a whole other video. That said, there are some great features for cinematography specifically with this camera. One being that it has the big 6 menu. This is that menu that tells you like ISO, shutter, frame rate, every important aspect really clearly on the menu, just like a Venice or like an Alexa. This is what all cameras should have. There's just too much information on camera screens. You want to be able to look at something quickly and know those 6 important factors that you're actually recording. Has a couple new features like this new image stabilization that holds your framing. It's not just about like keeping the shake out of your camera. It's actually about just holding the same style shot, which is actually kind of an interesting thing for documentary, because there's times that you're talking to someone and you just want to hold the same shot. You don't want it moving around. So that to me is a very interesting feature, and I hope that would be ported over to the FX3. One really cool feature about the FX2, which is where I think it could have a professional application, is this, and I was discussing this with Matti Hapoya actually on the plane. I ran into him on my way down here to LA. This camera could be a really great director's viewfinder or scout camera for a cinematographer. it can shoot log stills, which is kind of nice because then it keeps that whole workflow, the whole pipeline, the LUTs that you're using on your video footage, you can apply to these stills. So it can become a great tool for you to take references or to build your scout photos. So I could see this being used by some cinematographers. And then it's also a great C camera, something that you could place as a third angle or just even a second angle for interviews. I, for one, use my FX3s. I pair them all the time with cameras like the Venice and the Alexa. I have a big, huge interview for a doc series we're doing this next weekend, and I'm shooting on the Alexa LF, two FX6s, and we may throw in my FX3 as a fourth angle. They all match. These days, with colorists doing sky replacements on pretty much all footage, your difference between an FX6 and an Alexa, it's minimal. Truly, what colorists can do now, professional colorists in post-production, we can mix the footage all day. And like I said, the stops of dynamic range don't matter so much with everyone doing sky replacements. So could you use the FX2 as a second camera to the Alexa for something like an interview? I haven't got my hands on it. I haven't shot with it yet, but in theory, yes. So as a entry-level camera, it can be used in a professional setting. Now, it's just tough to get excited about camera releases these days, truthfully. You know, ever since kind of the FX6 for me, I didn't need much more in a camera. It would be nice to see ProRes on board, nice to see some sort of RAW or ProRes RAW, but that hasn't happened yet. But very rarely am I pissed at the 422 10-bit. It does great for most situations. And like I said, if it doesn't, then you usually just replace the sky. Protect the skins, protect the shadows, and you can deal with the sky later if you're in a pinch. So who do I see using the FX2? Perhaps film students, perhaps people who still love stills, that wedding videographer or photographer who wants to shoot some video on the side, or someone who's not ready to fully commit to something like the FX6, but they want to shoot some documentary. You have the top handle, you have XLR. In my opinion, you do not have a filmmaking camera unless there is XLR, unless there's good audio inputs. It's why I'm so confused with Blackmagic cameras. It's why I often don't use them. I think the images are beautiful in them, but the audio inputs are really confusing. You need good audio interfaces on your cameras, and I love the top handle that comes with the FX3 and that they're introducing, I think, the exact same one on the FX2. So will I be adding this camera to my arsenal? Maybe. I mean, I still shoot stills if I ever am going to, like I said, on my iPhone once in a while, on my A7 III. The stunted frame rate's a bit of a letdown, but I understand why. It's just helping that price point, and it's obviously too protecting the FX3. So if you do really want the full frame 120, go with the FX3. If stills really do matter to you, then maybe you want to consider the FX2. But I'm very interested to hear all your thoughts below. This has been a camera, like I said at first, I was like, I don't even know what to say about this. And then the more I thought about it, I'm like, oh yeah, you could use this as a scout camera. And if you really do need stills, it could be paired with your FX3. And when you think about the fact that you're getting two cameras in one, that $800 price gap makes a bit more sense. Where at first I was like, that's $800 is nothing, but it was so closely priced to the FX3. I was trying to think, is it trying to be that? But it certainly isn't. So I don't know. Let me know your thoughts below. I'm interested to hear what people have to say about it. Talking about cameras is like talking about religion or politics. That's probably the three things you should never talk about in a bar, right? They say like, don't talk about religion or politics. I think you got to add camera manufacturers in there because, wow, it gets heated. I don't love to do that all the time on this channel, but I am here. So tomorrow I'm going to go actually hopefully get my hands on the FX2. I'll be at the ASC headquarters hanging out with some amazing cinematographers. So stay locked to this channel because I'll do some reviews on the actual FX2, but try to get it on set, feel it out in that world, try it out in that world, see how it works. All right. Thanks, guys.